Well, good morning. My name is Corey Tabor. I am the Purpose Partner, founder, and president of Triple I Coaching, where we are informing, instructing, and inspiring you to fulfill your purpose. You know, Triple I Coaching does speaking, writing, coaching, and producing. And we are so excited today to release one of our new authors, Miss Sonya Washington, the author of The Lonely Only. Sonya Washington, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Corey. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem. We are so glad to have you working with us with Triple I Coaching to be able to help you bring your story to the airwaves through writing your own book, The Lonely Only. And so I want our listeners to get a chance to get to know you a little bit and get to know a little bit about you. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Okay, well, I am a native Houstonian, born and raised. And the late 90s, I did relocate to Austin for about 20 years. And in 2019, I returned back home. So I am back home in Houston, Texas.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about what do you enjoy doing for fun? What does Sonya do when she's not working or, doing the things that you have to do to make a living?
Absolutely. When I'm not working and I get a moment, I absolutely love, love, love swing dancing, line dancing, any type of dancing is where you can find me. And of course, I also enjoy watching baseball. My sons are still playing baseball and I enjoy watching them every chance I get. And of course, my favorite team, the New York Yankees.
Okay, you're a Yankees fan. The Yankees are kind of like my Cowboys. Everybody either loves to love them or loves to hate them. But either way, there's a love involved, with them. So that's so awesome. Well, I definitely want to just start letting people know a little bit about the book. Sonya came to me and said, "Hey, Corey, I've been working on this book. I want to get it published. It's called The Lonely Only." And you begin to share your story with me. And I was just like, wow, we got to make sure we get this book in print and make it available to others to have as a resource that they can use. So tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book, The Lonely Only.
I tell you, it was a journey of experiences with my sons. They are in their early 20s now, but they've all played ball since they were probably old enough to walk, right? And so we spent many years on the ball field. And I would say the early years through the mid-teens, it was pretty okay. It was very diverse. And there were, all types of people there from all parts of the city. And I would say in the middle school, high school level is where we started to notice, and I started to notice that there weren't many kids that looked like my kids. There weren't many kids that looked like me. And right about that time is when different things started to happen. We started to encounter discrimination, biases, stereotypes, lots of moments where my kids were the only ones on the team, or I'm the only mom that looks like me in the stands. And there were a number of things that were even happening in the schools with my sons. And with each of those things, there were teachable moments, learning moments for our family, rebuilding moments, nurturing moments, trying to reassure them that, they're perfectly designed by God and they deserve to be there. They're supposed to be there, and let's continue the journey there. And I would say following the social unrest of 2020, I began to speak to a lot of my friends who are allies for the African American community and try to explain to them and articulate to them what it's like being a mom of children of color and what we go through. And so I thought, why not create a resource that could not only help them understand, but help other moms know that they're not alone, help children of color that are playing baseball that they're not alone. And then also, I really hope that coaches out there hear the story, hear some of the stories and some of the things that we went through just as a family trying to support our children and something that they love. Help a coach maybe with blind spots that they may have. Because I will say, I really feel like there were times where the coach is so engaged in the game and the game plan and what's happening on the field that sometimes maybe there were blind spots to some of the things that were happening off the field. And so I think about all of those things as my motivation. In addition to, I think about my family in generations to come. I want them to understand and know that it's not going to be easy. It's not easy. You're going to face obstacles, but face them, stay tied to your faith, love one another, support one another, and you'll get through this. You'll get through it.
I mean, it's interesting because the subtitle of the book is the triumphs and tragedies, or tragedy and triumphs of raising biracial children in Texas. And I think people need to really understand what your family makeup was like. Like, as you were raising these boys in the baseball circuit, you're not raising boys that people can necessarily know are African American. So talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, definitely some trials and tribulations there, along with some great moments too. But my children are very, very fair complected, and when they were young, extremely fair complected, as you could see in some of the pictures. And so, oftentimes, in a couple of the moments throughout the book, they easily would put them with their father. But then I would show up, or maybe if I came a little later, often I would get looks like, "Hi, are you supposed to be here? Are you lost?" Or, and I'm like, "No, those are my kids right over there. And just, it was, and from the time that they were born, and there were early signs that that was going to be the journey. And even sometimes, even today, as they're in their early 20s now, and they do have more of my features at this point. But even there are times when we aren't easily put together as a family. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think that as we talk about what it's like to grow in this whole experience of playing kind of what I call club sports or highly competitive sports as a teen, the higher up you go in basketball, it gets blacker. The higher up you go in football, it gets blacker. But the higher up you go in baseball, it becomes less and less people of color. So talk a little bit about, for you as a mother of color, how that impacted the way your boys interacted with their teammates, but also how that impacted the way that you interacted with other parents.
Well, Corey, from very early on. So first of all, you're absolutely right. The boys did play a great deal of select ball. And you're right. The higher you go in that circuit, the more, um the less, I guess, the less it looks, and you'll see kids that look like you, especially African American kids, biracial kids. The majority of the kids are not going to look like you. And so, knowing the makeup of my family, I'm just going to be honest, very early on I said to myself, it's very important that both cultures are ingrained in my children. It's very important that they understand and they are comfortable navigating the African American community as well as the Caucasian community. And I wanted to make sure that they were comfortable in both spaces and they understood the culture. So there were deliberate things in their lives that as they were growing up, becoming young men, that we wanted to make sure that, their father and I, that they understood and that they can love both communities and that they were a part of both communities, and it's okay. As we begin to navigate those different teams and experiences, there were lots of moments where, irregardless of their makeup, they experienced some discrimination by the Caucasian race. In most of the situations, they were called names, the N word, things thrown at them, monkey sounds at them. There are moments where sometimes they would internalize and then come tell us later on. And some of the moments actually happened like right while we were present, not knowing all the time that those children belong to me kind of caught some people off guard. I think there was a period of time where I felt like, let me be forth, let me extend the olive branch, let me let you know who I am, let me introduce myself. But, over time, you become saturated with the pain and the blow after blow after blow, blows in the schools, blows in your extracurricular activities, just blow left and right. And it just got to a point to where I would just be by myself. I felt like my safe place was to be by myself and not engage in some of that, I guess, banter that would happen. And then I think there are moments sitting in the stands where I'm sitting mostly by myself, and you just sometimes yearn to for the company of those that look like you, but that's not always a luxury on the baseball field for single moms, moms of color, and definitely not for children of color. And you often wonder, are they being held to the same standards sometimes on the field? Do they get a more punitive punishment if they, drop a ball, miss a catch, or strike out? Sometimes it feels like, God, you're kind of harsh. But the other kid also struck out, and you just wondering in the back of your mind. And just a number of different things that have played out through the years that led me to say that I know I'm not the only mom out here who's going through this. I know my children aren't the only children that have experienced this. And one of the things that I said to myself as I was finishing the book is that if I can help one mom know that you're not alone, that there are other moms out here, unfortunately, that we're pretty much like one or two per team, but you're not alone. Continue to support your kid. And baseball is a great sport. It's just not where we need it to be right now. And we have to do our part to speak up, tell our stories, and make sure that coaches are aware that those children sometimes feel excluded or not part of, and what they face by not having anyone that looks like them on the team is a different journey for them, and sometimes a very lonely journey, you know. And so, Corey, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that totally answers the question. I mean, I think that's why, you named the book The Lonely Only. That's why you call it that, because you
Yeah.
felt like you were the lonely only person that understood what it was like to be a mother of color, of biracial children who did not necessarily look like they were African American, the phrases, the terms, the experience. And I think that oftentimes when people are in the majority, they don't understand what it's like to be in the minority. And when you live in a world where you can be the majority most of the time, which people of the Caucasian culture in our country, that can be their experience. They can live in neighborhoods where they don't have to experience a lot of Black people. They can go to schools where they don't have to experience a lot of Black people. They can go to churches where they don't have to experience a lot of Black people. So they can literally create a world where they are always in the majority. And if they ever experience being in the minority, it will wake them up to see this is what our lives are like the majority of the time. But especially with a sport like baseball, which historically we've had a ton of Black baseball players. I mean, you think about the Negro Leagues, you think about even when I was playing ball back in the 80s, there were more Black kids playing baseball than there are today. But because it's become a sport of means to some extent, it has excluded some people of color in the same ways that our stratification of our neighborhoods have,
Yeah.
caused us to become places where, you can live in a neighborhood now where you may not see people that look like you. So when you think about the book, what are you hoping other people get out of the book?
I think there is a myth or a misconception. Number one, that biracial children get a pass and that they don't experience these things. And they do. They do. They are not considered the majority, and they often experience discrimination, racial slurs, microaggressions, and they have to deal with them. And as a mom, I want to help them remain whole while they're dealing with them. So that's one, to dispel that myth that biracial children get a pass. They absolutely do not. I think.
And I'll say this real quickly before you jump forward and they get this challenge from both sides.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like you're not Black enough, but you're not Black enough.
Yeah.
So it's even more challenging, I think, than it would be like for me as an African American who grew up in a majority white environment. My Black friends were saying I acted white, but my white friends didn't really acknowledge my Blackness. So it was like I was in between. But when you're biracial, the world outside of the Black community, one drop of Black blood makes you Black. But in the Black community, oh, well, you're not Black enough. So I can imagine that was probably a challenge that your sons faced as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. From both sides, they have experienced different things that have happened to them. I think some of the comments that they've made are very similar to what you just said. Oh, you speak very nice for a Black guy. You don't talk like the other Black guys, is what they'll say to my kids. Oh, you're different. You're not like them. And that cuts. That cuts because they are a makeup of their mom and their dad. And so they do honor and respect both the African American community as well as the Caucasian, the majority and the minority, but yet they're constantly navigating these two worlds, right? Just like you said, it's they're not Black enough, they're not white enough, but it's their own unique challenge. But when I think about the book, my children were at my forefront. The experiences that we had were definitely at the forefront. But I will always also say to you is that it is for anyone, any person, any ethnicity, any whatever the situation is that is creating that lonely experience, that only lonely experience, because it gets lonely being the only one time after time and time again. And irregardless of your faith, irregardless of your experience, irregardless of your titles, your degrees, it starts to weigh on you, which is why after every single chapter, I made it a point and a purpose to pray for my family, to pray for your family, and anyone that is experiencing that, praying for healing, not only for the ones that experienced the pain, but also the ones who committed the act. Because a lot of times they're not aware, because as you mentioned earlier, when you're not in that circle, when you're not part of the minority, you may not even recognize what you're doing. And there were a couple things that I share in the book that happened that in talking to the perpetrator, I knew full well that they were not malicious intended things that happened, but just an unawareness. And so that is another purpose of the book, is to bring awareness, to pray for healing for those that are experiencing the lonely only moments, whether it's on the diamond, at work, in the classroom. And I talk about my place of refuge, which is my church, where we raised our children. That's a big part of the healing process for us too, and that's a lot of where we drew our strength from as well too, Corey.
Definitely. I mean, I want you guys to go out and get a copy of this book, The Lonely Only, because wherever you are in your journey,
Yeah.
you have probably been a person who has been the only one. I know in the book you talk a little bit about your experience working in the insurance industry. You shared with me you've been in the industry now for over 24 years. I don't know how that happens because you're only 24 anyway. But even in that experience, being a woman of color, moving up in leadership, as we were going through the experience of losing George Floyd at the hands of cops in Minneapolis, and then our nation kind of figuring out where they stood on the issue. We have people that support our police officers, but also realize that this was wrong, yet the media was asking them to choose. Or you have people who are white who are looking at an African American dying at the hands of a white cop, thinking this isn't who we are. This doesn't represent our people as a whole. What do I do? And so many of them, their first response when I was working with a number of my friends were, what can I read? Where can I contribute? What can I do to make a difference? So what would be your recommendation to the allies out there who are outside of the Black community, who are working with people like yourself, who are moving up in corporate America, who are people of color who may need opportunities, advocacy? And then what would be your advice, I guess, as well to people in the majority culture who are wanting to stand with people of color?
Oh, yeah. First of all, let me say, I have tons of those friends, and I'm so grateful for those friends. One word of advice is that I would say educate yourself about the community, because if you are unaware of what's happening in the community, then you don't know how to exercise your privilege, your position, or take a stand or help in those situations. I would say read books, talk to your people, talk to people of color that are on your team, reach out to them, stay dialed into what's happening in the world, and know that it's okay to say to them, hey, how are you today? I saw the headlines in the news. And I think, early on when George Floyd just happened, a lot of my friends were like, what do I do? What do I say? I don't want to open that can of worms. I'm not going to have all the right answers. And I believe none of us have all of the answers, but to just know that you care about this moment, this pivotal moment that's happening in my community, carries a lot of weight. And so I would say educate yourself, talk to your friends. Yes, absolutely. Pull books, documentaries, read the Lonely Only. It's a series of different events that have happened throughout my journey, which my journey is not a mirror of everyone else's journey, but there are things that are happening, especially as we experience our children being slain in the streets, because things that hit home for the African American community, they hit home for me. They hit home for my children. You don't have to just be a part of that community to experience the pain, right? And I think that is the role that our allies play, is that they help us navigate that moment, navigate through all of the noise, and help us understand, what can we do? Can we march together? Can we protest together? Can we, go to Congress together? We can, and we need to know that you care about those moments, and you don't just need a face to show up for work. There were a couple of days that I went to work with my game face on, right? But deep inside, I'm broken in half. I'm broken to the core, but I'm trying to show up and give you my 110%. And I had a moment with my manager where I was able to share with her. And her and I had a wonderful conversation about where I was and some of the things that my children had experienced. And we began to learn and teach and share. And I think I encourage that as well. With leaders that are in companies that they have direct reports that are part of, other minority communities as well.
Yeah, I think Champ Bailey in his Hall of Fame speech when he became a Hall of Fame cornerback in the NFL, he closed his speech by saying, "When we tell you our stories, believe us." And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're asking people to do. You're asking them not to dismiss the stories that you're sharing as your reality, as your experience. Again, as you said, much of what happened may not have been malintentioned, but it did create a negative impact on you and your sons. And so I think that, and your family as a whole. So I think that it's important for allies to know, when we tell you what we're experiencing, believe us, because this is true. This is how we are interacting and experiencing the world.
Absolutely, Corey. And another thing I would say to allies, because I am allies for other communities as well, and you have to be okay knowing that you're not going to get it perfect. You're going to misstep, but that's where having that great relationship with someone comes into play. Well, they'll help you navigate that space, help you when you maybe phrase it wrong or don't quite say it right, whatever the phrase is, and they'll help you. And that's part of that educational journey, and having allies and friends in place in different communities. You have to learn and educate yourself for sure.
Definitely. Tell us, what do you wish you had known about the journey before beginning the select circuit with your sons in baseball?
um, you know, I had this misconception that it would be family oriented, because that's what we experienced at the early ages. It was very family oriented. The team was like a family, and there was this significant closeness. I think I don't know what I wish I would have known. That's a tough one, Corey, for sure. But just that my children would, I think some of it shocked them. There were moments where they shocked them. If I wish I could have prepared them better for maybe the missteps that would happen, because they were accustomed to their teammates being like their brothers. They would come to the house. There were meals together. There were play dates together. There were dinners together. But as we began to move up into the select circuit and they were the only ones, there were times that they would go to dinners at teammates' homes and there would be a Confederate flag hanging in the window. And so I, of course, those type of things kind of made me get it into high gear to help my children understand the world and different views of the world. But I just think I wish I would have started a little earlier, perhaps, in helping them understand that one, that we are forgiving and a loving family and we love all, welcome all. But sometimes that's not the spirit of others, and how to help them navigate that and stay strong and not get broken. Because there were moments where my sons were broken. And that's a hurt because at the core, I'm just a mom.
Right.
I'm a mom like everyone else. I'm going in like a mom without a manual, and there's no book on it. And so I hope also that for new moms who have children that are beginning that journey, that you read these things and you're wide open and you're present. And sometimes you get tired because I had multiple kids in this circuit. And so I'm like 2 or 3 different tournaments in a week and you get tired. But I say to the moms, like, find your strength, be present, keep your ears open, because sometimes your children don't see the microaggressions and you need to be present and stand up for your kids. Stand up. There are times where I was like, oh my God, here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
But stand up for them. Don't let it slide. Don't let it go just because it's gonna create a difficult situation. But that's what I would say to the moms. Their father's present most of the time. Their dad was there a lot of the times, but there were also times where we had to split up because of the different kids' ages, right? And that's what I would say. Make sure you're tuned in, be present, try to minimize the loneliness that happens sometimes for your child.
Yeah, I think it's so important that people understand community is so important in this process. For you, you had your faith community, you had your family community, but you also just needed other people that you could talk to about what you were going through. And so part of what we talked about with this book is being able to create like an online presence that creates a Facebook group and other groups where parents who are going through the same process can have a safe place to discuss it, because the reality is feeling like you're the only one is so much of the pressure that parents are going to feel as they go through this process, supporting their children and doing what they're great at and doing what they're really good at. So talk a little bit about what you hope to see as we start creating these online opportunities through book clubs and through discussion groups and forums and that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that we can create our own community, right? I hope that we create a safe place where moms can come and ask questions or ask, about my journey if you want more stories, because I am so open to sharing so that you can know, you can look out, you can make sure that these things don't repeat themselves with your kids, right? And there was something recently on the news about one of the that was very similar to one of the stories, and I was like, oh my God, history is repeating itself, and I can only imagine how those moms feel. And I would just love the opportunity to talk to them, share with them. We can talk about your journey, what you're experiencing, but you're right. It's a community that we must form. There are so many things that will be similar, so many things that you will experience that we can talk about. I can share with you about how we navigated those things, what we said to our kids in those moments, and even just helping to prepare them for men, as men, to become advocates and allies for other children that are coming up behind them as well. So our entire family is on this journey still today, but absolutely the lonely only can definitely be a family so that there are no more lonely onlys is the goal for sure.
That's it, man. I think people will grow from one another. You creating the platform, you sharing your story, and they're going to hear each other's stories. And my hope is that we'll see this thing begin to grow and develop in
Yeah,
different parts of the country, so that, people in Texas, people in California, people in Florida, people in Michigan. I mean, baseball is everywhere, and the select sport opportunities are everywhere. And so I want to encourage you all to go ahead and get a copy of the book. Go to Amazon.com and get the book, The Lonely Only, The Triumphs and Tragedy of Raising Biracial Children in Texas, by the one and only Sonya Washington. Sonya, as we get ready to close today, are there any final words you would like to share with our listeners as they think about their journey and what they can do to take their next step in helping them in this process?
absolutely. I would say to each and every one of you that the journey is not always easy. You're not going to get it perfect. And in my book, I share imperfect moments. But as I moved throughout my journey, as I continue to climb and strive to do it better, provide a role model for my kids and a roadmap too, right? And that's all we're all trying to do. So I hope that in reading the book, that you can see my transparency, my vulnerability, in each of those every moments. And I hope that it helps you navigate and grow and enjoy your time with your children, and know that it's not an oddity. You're not being oversensitive, because those were some of the things that I heard too. That no, this is real. And together we can share, we can talk, and we can get through it together. Encourage your child not to give up and not to worry, that there are other children out there on this same journey with them, and that together we're going to get through it. Keep the faith, and I continue to pray for you as well as for my family too.
All right, so y'all go ahead and go over to Amazon and get your copy of The Lonely Only. It is available in Kindle edition as well as in the paperback, and you can order it there. And then we can also have you go ahead and order it. If you would like a signed copy of the book, you can go to CoreyTaber.com/book launch, and you can actually get a signed copy of The Lonely Only. You can purchase it there, and Sonya can sign a copy for you and send it to your group. We are hoping to also give Sonya opportunities to come to your sports team, to your baseball team, to your church, to your nonprofit, your company, because this is not just something that happens on the circuit. It's something that happens in our companies. It's something that happens in our nonprofits. It's something that happens in our communities. And so she can come and share, whether it be virtually or in person, to give your group an opportunity to hear her story and grow from her story, so that you can experience the benefits of knowing how to partner with people who are going through this experience. So thank you all so much for tuning in today. This is Corey Taber, the Purpose Partner, founder and president of Triple I Coaching, where we inform, instruct, and inspire you to fulfill your purpose. Go get your copy today of The Lonely Only, The Triumphs and Tragedies of Raising Biracial Children in Texas.